everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Motivation and That. My name is Natalie. I am your host, and today I am joined by one of my first mentees I ever had, who I swear has taught me more than I have probably taught him over time, Carmelo Montalvo. And I just want to say I'm so thrilled that we're coming full circle after like 10 years from our first noodles lunch that we had in Squirrel Hill, I think, or coffee or something of that nature, to now we're sitting here into our careers with so many learning opportunities that we've had over time. You've been a 30 under 30 person in Pittsburgh. I was 40 under 40. We advocated for each other to get there. And I think, while we're going to have some just open, transparent conversations about what it's like for millennials right now in the workforce, especially healthcare workforce, I think that we'll also be really hitting home some just awesome topics of the power of mentorship, the 360 nature of it, how important it can be. And I think this is going to be a cathartic conversation for us and probably a lot of other 30, 40 something year olds that are going through major life shifts right now. And that's a lot of us for sure. I always thought midlife crisis wasn't a thing. And then I realized you don't get a choice. It's just kind of shoved on you at some point. So I'm thrilled. Carmelo comes from the startup world, whether right out of grad school, but a football background, sports, understanding, all of these things that just come to make a really good leader. So I'm not going to read through your bio because I want to hear it from you, what you want to highlight about yourself and your career. So, Carmelo, tell us a little bit about who you are. How the heck did you get into healthcare in the first place? Is it where you're planning to stay at this point? What's it look like? What's life been like lately for you?
Thank you for the introduction, man. You make me sound like dope as hell, honestly. Um, yeah, so I'm Carmelo Montalvo. I'm a kid that's from New York by way of North Carolina. And as you mentioned, football, sports background, academically, heavy into the sciences, kind of where, we got aligned through ACHE. And like you mentioned, prior to you, I hadn't had many mentors. There were three individuals in my life that I had really talked to at that point. They were like mentors to me. So, since that time, yeah, things have kind of gone in many different ways. I think for me, I always like to start off with the family side of it. I am fortunate to have an amazing wife, Melissa. I have three dope kids. I have a 16-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Don't ask how I'm sane. The age difference is crazy. They all need something different from me. But professionally, I have been a consultant. I've started a few companies to my latest venture, and then most recently, kind of navigating what has been probably for many professionals a rather rigorous and crazy 2025 in terms of the job market. I was a part of a company before that I helped co-found Forest Devices, where we were looking at um, pre-hospital identification of neurologic deficit, and that came to an end in 2025, and then just kind of spiraling and then going to what I do next. So yeah, my background kind of runs the gamut. I'm currently a football coach at Carnegie Mellon. Also, I'm a professor there, and will be a professor at Duquesne coming up. And I am working on a new venture in the sciences that I hope to really get into during our conversation today.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm going to probably pick your brain about is you have a skill that I think so many people in healthcare, unless they're in consulting, like that real like niche top four consulting groups, struggle to have, which is raising money in sales. So unless you're
Mhm.
in a foundation, unless you're in those things, and it's one of the things that I always loved. I would watch your LinkedIn, and there'd be like you with the big check in front of you, like, oh, we just pitched. We got it. And it's like that idea of being so passionate about that thing that you're involved in to
Mhm.
get other people to believe in it. And that is a skill that you can't really teach. It's really hard to get someone confident enough to do that. And hopefully we'll get into that, especially as you're talking about the new venture, because obviously massive thing that you'll need, as you're kind of building from there. But you mentioned, and I'm going to start kind of off the healthcare track first, football piece, and I have to get into that because I love football as much as you do. Pitt's ranked right now, which means they will lose to Notre Dame this upcoming weekend. We'll listen to this in 3 weeks and be like, Natalie knew exactly what was going to happen. But lessons that you can learn from a football field and as a football coach when it comes to professional life. And I hate to say it's the getting knocked down, getting back up, getting back into it. What have you found it really just resonates with you as a coach and as a former player in the life that you have now that you're able to kind of pull from and link to?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, and I hope that people can really see my perspective here as being someone that does the coaching throughout the weekend, during the games on Saturday, and versus the professional that's doing the Monday to Friday kind of thing. I think the first thing that football has taught me is that the world will be a lot better place if we treat it like a locker room. Um, One of the beautiful things about sport is you meet people from all types of background. The diversity is a major component inside of these locker rooms. You get people from all walks of life that believe different things, and whether it be socioeconomically or racially, whether it is spiritually, sexually, whatever social demographic you could think about, a locker room encompasses it all for one cumulative goal, and that's to win. And when you think about corporate America at the highest level, it's kind of what everybody wants to get to. They just want to, do it differently. But the idea is to get this group of people, how do we get this group of people on the bus in the right seats? So, your driver isn't the person in the third seat next to the emergency exit window kind of thing, and going the right way down the right highway to the right destination. I think football taught me a lot about that. We could operate a lot better if the world was like a locker room, save for certain political people who say locker room talk is acceptable. So the second thing I'd say is that football taught me that ideas are cheap and that execution is expensive. So in the football game, you would think like, man, hey, just run the ball, do it over. You have one run, do it again. People kill me with that. Run the ball. What they don't realize is you ran that one play in practice easily 50 times. And you have to do it 50 times so you can do it right once in a game. And, it's like, okay, well, do it again. And then it's like, well, yeah, you had the idea for a run that looked very similar, but we didn't practice it. So we didn't block it up right. And because we didn't block it up right, we got tackled for a loss. I'm a defensive coach, so this looks a lot like blitzing. And let me tell you something, when you blitz the wrong gap, you get seamed, and that means somebody's running, and they're probably going to hit their head on the goalposts. So with that idea in mind, the idea is to do very amazing things is great, but execution is expensive. So in my mind, football has taught me that ideas are more a function of quality, but the execution is a function of, ideas are a function of quantity, but execution is a function of quality. And I think the last thing that football taught me is you always have life when there's time on the clock. I have been a part of some amazing comebacks. Just there's no way that you would think we would win that game, and we have won. And my time at Carnegie Mellon has been indicative of this. Man, we've built a reputation under the leadership of the current head coach and the previous head coach, and now the current head coach. Really awesome guy named Ryan Larson. Um, where as long as you have time and you're committed to things, you have a chance, right? And football teaches you that. So you fight tooth and nail for every blade of grass possible until the time is up. I think that says a lot about what you can do professionally, and that speaks a lot to my own personal career. You have to fight like hell. You mentioned this skill that I have to get in front of people and sound passionate and talk about what I'm doing and raise money. Honestly, I don't see any of it. Other people may see it. I don't see it. What I see is I have no fear, and I know what I need, so I'm going to go ask for it, but I'm going to present it in such a way that it's enticing to believe in the concept. And I see that no differently than we're down by 7, the 7 being like, the money that I need to do the idea. And I have to drive and score to raise this money. And, you know, a function of that is, do I have time left? Is there enough resources for me to go forward? So I think those three things uh, have been monumental for me, learning through the lens of football. And it's amazing. Like it's a sport where you're legally allowed to hit each other. It's kind of why I love it. It's barbaric, but those are the things I've learned.
I love it. And I mean, what a great little segue into this idea of startup life. So your comment on, as long as there's time on the clock, there's life left. And I
Hmm.
think that's fantastic. If you are the same age that we are, we've all watched Remember the Titans and that last, play where it's like, no, we're
Hmm.
going to do this. And I mean, that's an idea that just happened to have execution with it. But nonetheless, seconds left on the clock that ends up with a winning field goal kick or whatever the equivalent in life might be. And so when we talk about startup life, there is a lot of rejection as a part of that, right? You're going to get some no's. You're going to get people that go, I don't know why you want to do this thing, or it's already been done and hasn't worked, or, that's to your point, a great idea, but where's the proof of concept? So that, but there's still time on the clock necessarily. We put our own limitations on that time, whether it be how much money we have that'll get us through our next kind of mortgage payment or those kind of things. But what has been your mindset from being a part of an organizational startup when you were with Forrest to now kind of doing your own startup effort? And I'm sure that's a little bit shift, right? You're taking on more of the risk in this component, and being afraid and being scared is probably the biggest deterrent for people for taking that leap and going into it on their own or leading the charge for that change. So talk to us a little bit about what you've learned in this industry and, how it's kind of contributed to the approach you're taking now.
Well, I think that what I've learned is for many, the idea, the concept of innovation is second nature. You do it every day, right? Like if you have a problem at home, you don't hire a plumber every time your sink is stocked up. You probably try to fix it yourself, right? So the idea to problem solve seems to be a deep ingrained human behavior to always want to start with yourself. I think where people are often sway towards that lifestyle versus not is really it's anxiety and it's comfort. And honestly, I think human nature is to seek comfort. So in that regard, professionally, I think that's totally fine. I mean, I worked at Booz Allen. I totally get it, right? So at part of Forest, moving more directly to your question, that was just kind of context for the backdrop of my answer. In Forest, it was this amazing opportunity. Here I am at Carnegie Mellon. I meet some dope people that have this great idea for trying to help patients dealing with stroke and really just jump into it and then really seeing how it can evolve from a three-person team to a five to a 10 to a 15. And then the reality of a 15 down to a 10, down to a seven, down to a three, four, new money comes in, things happen, a pandemic, like we'll be in the history books. I'm teaching my 4-year-old now when he's in high school. He'll be like, Dad, this really happened? I'm like, hell yeah, it happened. Right? We were stuck in the house for a year. Um, but that journey, I would say, is much like what you would experience in a bureaucratic or larger bureaucratic organization. The bureaucracy is born out of risk mitigation. In a startup, you are able to be nimble because the risk mitigation is purely goal oriented, mission oriented. It's not business oriented just yet. And that, for me, suited me very well. I wanted to be fast. I don't like being told no. I'd rather be told, well, do it this way. And that really catered, that environment catered to me. So I was fortunate to be a part of Forest Devices, really building an innovative product that's now on the market. It's called the Signal NED. It detects neurologic issues in the pre-hospital or when imaging isn't readily available. And yeah, here I am putting on for my old company, and I got like laid off. But the reality is that that technology is going to help a lot of people, and that's what it was about, right? Removing my selfish intent from it. It was amazing in the early days. Everything was a race to the finish. There was no quick to the slow, move fast to the slow type of moments. Everything you knew was hyper aligned to an objective, and that was so satiating, right? Like when you build a cabinet you get from IKEA, I don't care if it's from IKEA. You like, yo, I did that, right? That's what it felt like most days. And waking up to go to work, there wasn't much to have to struggle to do to motivate you. That zeal came naturally. And you're right. That onus on making sure people were paid and things continued to move a certain way, wasn't on me in that first opportunity. I had previously in college started a company, but honestly, I was an idiot and, you know, stopped doing it way too soon. I made a little bit of money out of it, but, you know, neither here nor there. Forest was really kind of the baptism by fire. Um, but even though it wasn't on me, I often feel like one of the worst things I did was wear it, but without the ability to make the decisions. And assuming that that amount of stress did a lot to me, you know, physically and emotionally. It also did that to the people I love. You know, I can only imagine what it was like. Talk if you would have asked my wife or my mom or my dad, like, yo, how was he at certain points during this time? I was like, I'm probably not a fun person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but now transitioning over to my current role, all the lessons I've learned have helped me. And that's the thing, right? Experience is learned after the fact. So, like, with reflection, I was able to see back in between the time with Forrest and now, like, what it really meant to be the one hunting what, hunting and having to eat only what you kill in the most barbaric sense. Because if you do not raise the money, there is no money. And I tried to go corporate. Natalie, I applied for like 2,400 jobs. And up until last year, I had like 3 job offers standing always.
Mm-hmm.
This year, 2025, I applied for like 2,400 jobs. Maybe 3 offers. And they were all like crap, you know. I think it should be, shameless plug, completely tangential. It should be illegal for people to say, hey, a job offer is going to pay you like 100 grand. And then when you go get the job, they offer you 70 for no other reason other than they have 100 people trying to get the job. That's wild to me. But, I digress.
Oh, yes. We could do a whole episode on HR practices and policies, and maybe someone listening to this will come on and want to debunk some of them. But I mean, between the AI scanning of stuff that doesn't translate an experience, whether it be yours as being in that startup world or mine from a federal background, to what the
Yeah.
corporate world kind of looks like. But it's all a little funky right now and a little murky, and I think the bottom will eventually kind of fall out. But at that point, I hate to say, they've lost some really brilliant people, to now who have had no other option but to figure out, how do we do this for ourselves, and then how do we enact a lot of that change going forward. So I talk about innovation. We're
Yeah, I
sitting
mean,
in the hot
right
pot.
now,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, look, I think about you. I mean, this podcast is indicative of that story. I think it's dope. I mean, this thing that I'm doing now is indicative of that story. And it's ironic, right? Like, would you be doing this if you were comfortable with your last job? Like, if it wasn't political pressure or economic pressures? No, right? Because we seek comfort. I wouldn't be, I'd still be, I mean, it wasn't exactly comfortable at Forest, but I'd still likely be doing it, right? Which is crazy to think, looking at it, going the other way, on the other side of it.
No, 100%. And I've said that same thing. Had I not been in the situation I was for 6 months, I'd still be a federal employee right now in the midst of the shutdown and whatever, because it's what I knew and it was comfortable. But to the point that you just mentioned of like, had someone talked to my mom or my wife, for me, it was someone talked to my husband, and last night he's like, I feel like I don't see you much anymore because I'm kind of everywhere now. Like it's just bouncing. And I said, it's because I'm literally not tethered to a computer 12 hours a day in one office that you see me because you knew where to find me. But
Hmm.
I wasn't really with you. I wasn't present for at least a solid 6 to 9 months of that. And now, while it may feel very different, isn't this, kind of a beautiful growth process? And it's the whole point of the podcast, the hot mess to high potential. Like that reflection back on what were the things that, and it's not that you want to change them, but like you can see it now with that hindsight and say,
Hmm.
I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to change that as I go into this next chapter.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this next chapter because I want to start kind of digging into it. Is, you mentioned laid off. I resigned. We're kind of in that same boat. Now it's like, all right, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, both, this is where I talk about the mentorship, just finds the right people and stuff. You know, you had some knowledge sitting there that you were connected to. I had an LLC on the shelf that was dusty as could be. And look at us now. Like, I've dusted off the LLC, and you are re-engaging in some past, things that you knew. So tell us about it, and tell us what this journey has been like now that you are the one with that risk and with that kind of drive, and your name is on this now.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's been a crazy turnaround. When we first talked about the idea of the podcast, I had just started, so I told you, hey, we gotta wait because I'm not sure how this thing is gonna shake out. But the story goes, I'm laid off at Forest. Financial tensions primarily was the rationale, and whether, that is the reason or not, that's what I was told, and that's what I accepted. And I spent probably about 2 weeks in this I don't, deep kind of like stage of depression almost. I tethered myself worth to my ability to procure an income and to what I was at the time feeling like was a failed mission. And, um, you know, there were some very close people in my life that helped gather me. But, my wife had said something to the effect of, Forrest didn't make Carmelo. It was actually the other way around. And she was like, regardless of you're there or like at Burger King, you're still you. And that it took about a week for that really to set in. And that's when it hit me. I have like an entire book that I've been writing since I was 12 of companies that I'd make if the technology was available. And one of the things, and I'm going to go real nerd on you.
I'm
One of the
ready.
things that I one of the things that I loved when I was in grade school was Power Rangers and Dragon Ball Z. And in both of these things, right? In Power Rangers, Zordon is kind of like in this goop. All you see is his big face, right? But he's suspended in this liquid. And in Dragon Ball Z, every time one of the main characters gets into a fight and they get beat up, they go into this chamber, and the chamber is basically just looks like water, and they sit in the water until they're healed up. I said, man, that'd be cool if like something like that existed. And that became the genesis of this idea um, of using oxygen as a way to help heal people more than what we can do right now. And out of that idea came Aethl Bio, which is the current company that I'm, leading and embarking on this journey with. And the main mission of Aethl is to revolutionize healing using a new age oxygen therapy. And the reason why the liquid becomes so important is I had been um, previously exposed to the idea that you could use some certain liquids to help heal people. I mean, most of the wound applications they get acquired are hydrogels, right? So like, there's obviously something to that idea. And I said, well, what could happen if we could take what people use to treat chronic wounds, diabetic foot ulcers and venous leg ulcers, and we can condense it into a form factor that you won't need to use a hyperbaric chamber, which is basically what people do with. That's what they would use. They would use topical oxygen therapy, which is like you put your foot in a bag and you seal the bag and you put oxygen on it, or you go into a hyperbaric chamber and get oxygen therapy that way. Both come with their own risks. So, well, what happens if we could do the same thing, but do it hyper localized and more in a more economic fashion? And that's what we've done at Aethl. We took the power of hyperbaric chamber, or what's known as HBOT therapy, and we put it in a can. And inside this can is a oxygenated solution that contains like a rather crazy amount of dissolved oxygen. It's like 3 times higher level. And people don't think about this because you take oxygen for granted. Like right now, we're both breathing. But what you're breathing, right, we need oxygen to live, is only about 20% oxygen. What we did is we took about 13 times that amount of oxygen, put it into a can that you can apply topically by way of a gel. And our secret sauce is both our formulation, what's actually in the can with the oxygen, and our manufacturing process. Like, how the hell did you get that much oxygen in a can and it not explode? because you have to pressurize things, and there's a whole bunch of sciencey stuff that I probably shouldn't say. But the idea is this: could there one day be a world where instead of someone having to have a leg amputated because of a DFU or diabetic foot ulcer, excuse me, because of these type of wounds, and instead of them having to sit in the couch and do a therapy for an hour, 2 hours, 3 times a week, or go and sit inside of a hyperbaric chamber, which comes with its own litany of risks, could I do something? Could there be a world where instead they're just putting on this ointment, covering it with a bandage, cleaning it, and then doing that again, and it heals the same? And that's what we embarked on. And that's where we are going. I feel really, really excited about it because as I've talked about this idea, it's kind of taken off. I must say, I have been fortunate enough to raise a good bit of money. I'm not going to say just how much yet because I'm waiting for the press release, but it's enough. It's enough where someone would say, "Hey, you completed a seed round or pre-seed round." Enough for me to be employed, and enough for me to, really embark on this vision. And I think the core thing about why I love what I'm doing now is it helps me kind of check all the boxes. I'm going to help people. It's a really hard problem to solve. It's going to be, in my mind, if it works, a revolutionary gain to humankind. The ability to treat a chronic wound without the need of a medical device, in a way that it heals previously unhealable wounds. Amazing to think about. And then it also has like consumer benefits too, because I'm going to put it in like a consumer gel. It's going to help with. We have an aging serum. It'll help with acne. Oxygen is a really dope thing. It's actually crazy that people haven't used it more.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Aethl is doing. I know I'm kind of sounding scatterbrained, but in an acutely focused, what we are is we are a biotech company looking to change the way that people heal. We are looking to revolutionize healing, and so people could live fully and heal deeply, such that the solutions of old are tertiary at best, and ours become the point solution for chronic wound healing.
Well, and I just think of so many other applications for things like this. And I mean, you get me excited. I just came off of an education session with an organization called Not Impossible Labs. Mick Ebeling and his team, amazing. Carmelo, if you haven't looked into it, you're basically like uh, very similar to their thought process. And their idea is, help one, help many. Like have that one person know that story that you're really trying to impact, and how many of us have family members that have had, diabetic grandparents or family members that have had to have amputations or been through that and how damaging that can be. But I also think about my life in the animal rescue community and the
Mm-hmm.
bites injuries that some of us get. I mean, I had a cat bite through my fingernail and my fingers like took a little while to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And how that would have potentially impacted not I don't want to say not having to take antibiotics for things like that. You're always going to want an antibiotic, but being able to close that open wound when my toe was shattered and it was an open fracture. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, am I allowed to go on vacation like I wanted to? Because who knows what might get into my toe while I'm walking, on a beach in my boot somewhere. So it's all of those components. And I think the idea that, you've brought forward also being one that, and we see more and more of this, and it's kind of why I mentioned Not Impossible, is that it's not necessarily going through the same FDA process because it's natural. It's like it's the Eastern remedies versus Western medicine idea and blending of the two. Not Impossible came up with this thing that you could put on your arm for people with Parkinson's that in 50% of the cases, I think, would remove the tremors, and they were able to do it
Mm-hmm.
differently. Didn't pass FDA trials. So it doesn't end up as a Medicaid reimbursable item or, things like that. You have to promote it differently. And it has different uses then, which is fantastic, And it's the same idea, I feel like here. I've been to an oxygen chamber. I've had the little thing hooked up and I feel good. Like
Yeah.
you tend to think like, again, like you said, I'm breathing this every day, but you supercharge that
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
blood cells, it's a little different. So, I mean, when you've been talking about the pitches, when you've been talking to people about this, in a world where groups like Row.co, Hims, Hers, all of these, things we see on TV now that are like, you don't have to go through your doctor or your insurance. Is there a balance you're striking between understanding medical benefit without being constrained by things like payers
Mm.
or all of the, like I said, the FDA. How does that work for you?
Yeah, it is striking a balance, but for us, the reality still remains that the FDA is the regulatory and adjudicating body for us. Is this that we're going with a wound application, which is technically classified as a medical device? I would think of us very closely as like Thera honey. It's this Manuka honey. It's known to help wounds stay moist to promote a healing environment. I would think of us very similarly to that. And though we are not honey, it is a very basic formulation. We are trying to do the same thing. I want to be able to have you put this on a wound. I want you to be able to put it directly on hypoxic tissue and start to build back that tissue, going through the body's normal healing cascade. And I think where we strike this difference is just the size of the problem. Um, it's like 6.5 million people affected by just diabetic foot ulcers. This isn't chronic wounds. So, like the people that have the wounds on their legs or their arms, this isn't even them. We're just talking about acutely DFUs. And in Western Pennsylvania alone, this is a huge issue, especially in our veterans population. Um, we're talking about high cost trade offs here, $15,000 to $40,000 in terms of treatment, and then the trade off personally is you don't treat it the right way, you lose a limb, right? So where we strike that balance is accessibility. I want to be able to make it with FDA approval or not, CMS not withholding. I want to be able to make it to where everyone can have access to it. There's price considerations there, but this is not something I'm looking to be like the insulin guy. I'm not trying to make something that's so prohibitively expensive that, removes more than half the people that actually need it. I'm actually trying to do the opposite. I think healthcare in this country is a bit of a disservice to the reason why we even do healthcare, which is for the good of all. A healthier population means a healthier lifestyle for everyone. So we want to be able to provide this to as many people as absolutely possible. So yeah, we have to make money. And when I raise money, they're not trying to hear that. They're trying to hear like, hey, how much money can I make off of this? That's great. But to your question, we strike this balance by, yeah, we are regulated by the FDA, but CMS agnostic almost, because more than likely, if we do this the right way, we can make sure the people that need it the most. And whether that's a model by which when we sell something, we give something, or if that's working directly with agencies that have budgets for something to help people, but maybe their budget doesn't buy it at the rate that another group can. We just change the pricing for them. One of the best things about me being the leader of this organization is I choose that. I am the one that says, hey, culturally, this is what we are going to do. And when talking to investors, it's very important that they are aligned to my method of thinking. So I've been fortunate. So far, they are. Um, you know, Everyone likes to think about the big bad boogeyman for a lot of investors and how they're just only money hungry, like succubi almost. But that's not the case for the ones that I'm working with. And I really do hope that we can establish kind of this dichotomy here where, hey, yeah, we have to make money, but also societal good is a main tenet of what I am doing. Because, helping 6.5 million people sounds pretty fucking awesome.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where I want to live.
Well, and you mentioned trade-offs, and this is something, I mean, as a risk professional, I don't think people do it enough, where they're so focused on the short-term potential, consequences of something that they don't see the long term. So you mentioned 6.5 million, and the thought process there is, okay, if 20% of those individuals did not need long-term, severe level, high acuity care, what is that trade-off in cost? And from
Hmm.
an investment standpoint, to where it then becomes self-sustaining over time, and that it costs to the industry. And I
Hmm.
hate to say, to caregivers who are having to step in and be a part of that, to the loss of work from people that can't now go back to the same industry that they had been doing previously, any of those kind of things. And so I don't think that we ask enough whys in a lot of those situations, or
Yeah.
do enough of those hypothetical pitches, especially when we're in corporate world. So you're you're sitting in your hospital setting, right? And you're like, oh,
Hmm.
we want to do this really wild, innovative thing. And they're like, we can't handle that hit for the next 2 years. And it's like, okay, so if we were in the red for the next 2 years and then we were in the black for 10, because this sets us up for such incredible success, it seems like we've lost the ability to understand that that's the true risk conversation, right?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, societal pressures are ever changing, and I think that's part of the reason. Perspective is something that's best seen in hindsight for most people. And I think about it a lot of even just currently the current state of the world. Like at the time of this recording, we're going through this battle politically about healthcare access due to the ACA subsidies and the budgeting process of our government. Um, and I can't help but think, man, what would it have looked like in the '90s, or better yet, when it was really getting traction in the '50s? What would it have looked like if America joined all the other modernized countries and provided, as a portion of our tax dollars, a healthcare system that was socialized? And even saying that has been a politicized statement, right? But I'm thinking about it on like what we're talking about purely on the economic side. I mean, how much good could we have done our society by doing that? That makes these arguments that we are experiencing over the last 20 years futile. Like, what would a Barack Obama presidency have looked like if there was no need to develop the ACA? Right? What would it look like right now if there was no need to argue over SNAP benefits and rising healthcare costs? You know, and that's what I mean. Perspective is better seen in hindsight. Because for those other countries, they're probably looking at us like, yeah, we have problems, but we ain't got that problem, right? And from my perspective, man, you're absolutely right. Like we probably won't get to all 6.5 million people, and people will always be, gaining these, and some people you can't help, right? But the reality is this: what if we can get to just like you said, 10%? I'll even be more conservative. You said 20, 10%, 5%, right? You have fundamentally changed a lot of people's lives, and then even further, I believe that our product can be used prophylactically. So what happens if we prevent it? What happens if I provide a product that in skilled nursing facilities or in elderly care homes where people who are prone, these populations prone to these type of wounds and these type of issues can use this product and never develop the chronic wound to begin with? What happens? Then we have the ability to look back, hindsight, right? Uh, I think you're absolutely right. People are too short-sighted, and thank God my mother didn't raise and my father didn't raise a short-sighted son, because that's just not me. And I don't think you could be in entrepreneurship and be that short-sighted either. I mean, you got to stay on the track, but you got to see what's ahead.
Yeah, I sat in that training session last week, and it was very clear that I was with a lot of operational people, and the issue was, well, if the payers just didn't do X, Y, and Z, we could deliver the care that we needed. And at one point, one of the leaders at the table said, "Sounds like we're talking about universal health care." And I went,
Hmm.
"No shit, Sherlock!" Like that was like the internal feeling of everyone sitting here is saying, if I didn't have to do all of this with payers, we could actually provide care that was necessary. And, it's the pendulum swing, as you mentioned, like that risk conversation, to the over controlled bureaucracy of some things went wrong. We lost some money, some stuff, just went bad. And now we've over controlled it. And any idea under controlling completely just makes people
Hmm.
start to panic. But the reality, I love the thought process of what would have been everything that we could have done in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, if we wouldn't be fighting about who deserves healthcare and who doesn't. And that may be the most controversial statement I've ever said on here, but the idea that some people deserve or have access to better healthcare than others because of what they've done in life or how much they earn is mind blowing to me. That
You and me both.
could you imagine if we were in a world where there was equal access to wellness, and
Hmm.
wellness created the best version of humans that there could be? Like, just I mean, there are people who probably would have done amazing things had they just been able to get
Hmm.
basic needs. So I'll
Oh
get off
yeah,
that
we
soapbox,
agree.
but thanks for giving me the opportunity to probably shoot that out there. But I want to talk about the pivot ideas. So like we've talked about, hey, we had this kind of layoff. I had some stuff in mind, but in entrepreneurial life, you have to be willing to jump, to pivot, to shift. Like, let's say one of your investors comes forward and says, I love that. What if we could do this too? What's that mindset go through? Like that idea of, okay, real time, I now have to figure out, yep, 100%, we're going to do that for you if you throw in, or not right now.
Yeah. So I I love this. It's a book by Howard Marks, I believe. It's called The Most Important Thing. And something that I've been saying a lot to our team is keep the thing. And it's exactly on what for this point. Because, you can do many, many, many pivots. But the thing that you are trying to do, I would say the reasoning, your North Star has to remain constant. And Einstein has like this dope quote that I have in my office. It's like everything should be made simple, but not simpler. The reality is there are going to just be problems and opportunities, and usually that's where there's going to be problems and solutions, and that's where the opportunity is going to lie. Those pivots have to be chosen wisely, in my opinion. I have honestly bounced between like 4 and 5 in 75, 76 days, and I think that's probably natural. Where I think people get in, where you can get into trouble. Let me not say people, where, especially for myself, we can get in trouble if there's no methodology behind which you're making the decisions on the pivot. If you are just jumping into every idea as it comes to you. Again, ideas are cheap, execution is expensive, right? So when you have these ideas, I think you just write them down. Something that we do at Aethl is we use Monday, so this is not a shameless plug for that company, but I find it to be very helpful to me. We use Monday, and we have an entire board of just pivot ideas. I mean, what if we could do, or what if this could work? And then, knowing what the strategy is and how to move forward and what our North Star is, if those things can be done in parallel paths that allow us to still keep the thing, we'll explore them. If they're not, then yeah, they're just gonna have to wait. And something that I learned at Forest is a lot of people defer to wherever happens next. Like, hey, the acquirer can worry about that. Um, I don't want to say I'm deferring, but I'm also like, I don't know if I'll be the leader. I don't know if I'll be the CEO when we do that because I'm not really with that idea, right? So I think keeping them scoped and pivoting is natural, especially in innovation, because the innovation is the pivot, right? It is the change from the status quo. But the other ones, the sub pivots, yeah, we have a bunch of them, and I basically just go through a decision making process for it. And if it doesn't align with what gets us to the thing, um, then we don't do it. And I guess the last point I'll make on this specifically, and I think it's really important. I'm not sure if we've touched on this point. I would say the number one key trait to that is decisiveness. People live in indecision. I do not. Uh, I oftentimes tell my wife I have decision fatigue. So like things like trying to figure out what we eat next or where we're gonna go. She probably gets really irritated me like, bruh, just make a decision. And I'm like, look, you don't even realize I made like 8 decisions today and I am exhausted with that. Right? But yes, being decisive about what you do and what you don't is how you optimize your chance of success. I truly believe it. And where I feel that people get lost in that sauce, or anyone could, is you're not decisive enough about what you believe a pivot is.
Well, and I love that component because it brings to an episode that I'll publish before this. I talked about a framework a lot with the compliance expert, and we said, things change, but if your framework remains consistent, and that can be your
Mm-hmm.
decision process, right? You can
Yep.
change your tolerance levels for certain things, but if one of the points you always hit on is, does this connect to my mission? Then that doesn't budge. And everyone knows no matter what, it's going to have to connect to the mission, or it's going to have to connect to the target population, or it's going to have to, all of those components. So, I love that just mindset. And I'm with you. When I would get done with my days at the VA and my husband would be like, what do you want to do tonight? And I'm like, it's 7 o'clock. I want to get in PJs and I want to lay down and not make another decision for the rest of the night. So like 100% totally understand that. But I think one of the questions that I definitely had in kind of our wrap up section, I want to talk about mentorship before we close out too, is this idea that innovation is, something that always has to be to do more, to do better, to improve, to improve, to improve. And is that really the truth? Like, is that the world of entrepreneurship, or is sometimes there an effort and I want to go back to your simple piece, right? Is that sometimes we overcomplicated stuff, and undoing
Mm-hmm.
might be the innovation that sits ahead of us. So what's some of that, just your experience there?
I think you're absolutely right. I actually think that fundamentally, humankind will see its largest steps forward by undoing some of the things that we've already done to ourselves. Just think about climate change as a really fascinating, kind of important, example for today, right? We spent so much time not knowing what we were doing, then we figure out what we're doing, and we're in this kind of weird place of trying to help, not do it more, solve the issue, quasi, while also saying the issue doesn't exist. I don't know. I think ultimately, ultimately, I have a couple of core beliefs, and uh, you know, one of them is that you can't argue with the fish that believes it can climb a tree. So, for that to happen, to answer your question about innovation, I do believe that much of it stands in the way where the opportunity is that if you can make something more simple or more accessible, that is the innovation. And in healthcare, this is observed a lot. Most of our innovations come around quality of care and optimizing care. The entire AI push for in healthcare is this idea of optimizing care, right? It's how do we make this more simple for patients, for caregivers, for physicians, for the entire value chain. And in that way, we are undoing previous processes to onboard future processes to help us. But I do think there's something to be said about, the creation of new. And I think for the entrepreneur, it just depends, right? What is it that the opportunity is, and how mentorship. I think mentorship plays in that role is just like when I met you. I had like very very aligned questions when I talked to you. Like, hey, I am not from this world. How do I like learn about it, right? Like, hey, I'm in this world now. I'm a big black guy. I'm Puerto Rican in Pittsburgh, which at the time to me felt like a very homogenous city at Carnegie Mellon. Many people don't even understand how I speak. My entire person is different. Help me is kind of what I came to you with, right? And I think that part of the reason I stayed being an entrepreneur is because of my mentor's reinforcement. Like, yeah, dude, be you. That is absolutely okay. And, as you know, I spent my entire first 2 years after grad school trying to do forest while also attempting to be a consultant because the consultant role is what was picked for me in grad school. And you're such this, you're such that. And my internships are telling me this, and my private work is telling me that. But really, what led to the innovations that I have been fortunate to be a part of was really someone saying, dude, just like it's okay, exist in that way and for what you believe your purpose is. And yeah, so like, yeah, I'm a person that likes to say I didn't have fear about doing the work that I do. What I had fear and caution about is being able to exist in what I believe was an environment that was designed without me in mind. And then it hit me that my own personal innovation is I just have to make the environment work for me. Like, how do I navigate this structure? And in the way that an entrepreneur would, how do you navigate the current market to get you to a place where your innovation means something? And I think that anyone seeking to embark on an entrepreneurial, and even if it's not entrepreneurial, because I know organizations now are trying to become more entrepreneurial. So there's whole departments where people can be like an entrepreneur, but they're not exactly an entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
They don't have to worry about where their next meal comes from in that regard. Um, to just do it, right? Like literally to just do it. I find that most of the things that die never started. So just do it. I mean, life is risky as hell. No one gets out alive. John Ron said that. Like, no one gets out of life alive. So why wouldn't you? Right? So whether it's simplifying something, or making something new, like therapeutic, in healthcare anyway, making like a drug. It, whatever it is, you should just do it if you believe that the innovation can help people and can help you.
And when you were saying that, about bringing those set of questions and being different, and I remember I was like, I'm pretty sure I told him just to be himself, like that he is the reason it's special and that it's working. And same exact thing with my other mentee that's going to come on eventually, Mia, when she was like, I think I overshared in my interview, and I'm like, you're probably the only person they remembered, and she got the job, And so that component that eventually it's not always going to end up is in our favor, right? And as we might think, we are going to push and someone's going to say, I don't care anymore. There's the door. Like, great. You're saying that you do everything a COO does. I'm not going to pay you for it. If you're not happy about it, leave. But that's, whether we realize it or not, that's still one door opening and another door closing at the same time, right? It's just now, okay, I'm going to see how this plays out for me.
Hmm.
But in the end, that means that wasn't the spot for me. If I felt that I was so valuable based on what I was doing and that value wasn't seen by others, then that's not the right place, because obviously I have a different perspective of myself than they did of me. So I think that idea, and I think it's really important when you're looking for a mentor, right, is that the
Hmm.
mentor isn't trying to change you or mold you into something that they think is best, but that they are supporting you on your journey on what they, if they're a good mentor, can pick up on are your strengths and what makes you such a good potential leader and person in the future. So if anything, one thing I will say is never be afraid to walk away from a mentor or to tell a mentee, I don't think this is right. I'm not going to have all the answers for you. If that's what you're looking for, let me help you find someone that might be the right fit. But it's no different than finding the right therapist, than finding the right boss, than finding the right anything.
Hmm.
You got to find the right person. And maybe that's, I think we went like 2 years before we checked in again. But like riding a bike, you get back in and you're like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like you got married, you had 2 more kids. What happened? And but you're there for each other. And that's long-term mentorships, so beautiful in the sense that they become 360. They become a way for me to support you, you to support me, us to support each other in the change that we want to see in our world. So
Absolutely.
I want another, gosh, I keep getting on the soapboxes, but it's just, it's powerful. And,
Hmm.
I think that we really hope the best for each other. And in a world where competition is so toxic, especially in healthcare, especially in entrepreneurship, to be able to create spaces and relationships that are about how do I elevate you in the
Hmm.
moment of need that you have and support you, knowing that in the end, it's probably going to make me feel like a better person too. Whether or not I am a part of that or monetarily impacted, it's the sharing of success from just the kind of root of it all. But
I agree.
Carmelo, you've got a 16-year-old. She was, I think, 6 when we met, because I remember she
Mhm.
was sick from school the one day.
Yep.
And now you got 2 more. What are some of the things that you hope that they see from you as dad and that they internalize and that they, take forward as they grow in this life that they have?
Man, that's a question that makes me immediately emotional. That's crazy how quick that happened. Well, it's different for each one of them. They're in different parts of their life. So I guess the best way for me to answer this is like what my current thinking is, because with time it'll probably change. But starting with my 16-year-old, I want her to see value in herself without anyone explaining what that value is to her. I want her to know that regardless of anyone's perceptions, thoughts, that she is in every way an addition. And in environments where it makes her feel that she is not, to be extremely cautious and hesitant to why that is the perception. I want her to understand that she can do whatever she wants to do if she puts her mind to it, but that doesn't mean that she should do it. I also want her to know that at the end of the day, no matter what it is, she can always come home. Mom and dad got her back. I want her to be able to see people the way that they are intended and not transactionally, because I think the world has done a work on our young people to seeing people's value as transactional only. And I want her to feel that being herself is the best way to be happy, no matter what anyone has to say about it. And that she can, she is capable and she is worthy of whatever successes or failures that she has. And that there is a major power into being able to get up and start again with those things, the things I've already said in mind. So that's my 16-year-old. She'll be going to college in a year. She's a junior now at Kappa in Pittsburgh. So yeah, damn, talk about a decade passed so fast. My 4-year-old, he is this sprawling, super strong, huge boy. And man, I love him to death. And I want him to know that his energy is not to his detriment. That it is going to be, how do you direct that to make the world a better place? I want him to know that he's not being attributed to being, as a man, as a little boy. He's they're calling a spade, right, Nat? Like, we are growing up in some arduous times to look like how we do, right? I am acutely aware of the world he is growing up in. That he is a boy and he will have the ability to be a kid. And as long as I'm around, um, he will always be a kid. He will have the chance to have a childhood and not be forced into this perception of manhood that little boys get too often. I want him to have a fuck ton of fun and learn so much, right? Explore everything he wants to do because he's brilliant already. Um, and know again that he can always come home and dad and mom always got his back. And for my little girl, man, she's just like, she was a potato for an entire year, right? Like, they're a potato for a year, and it's like, holy hell, I have legs, right? Um, I just want her to enjoy being able to truly appreciate, without societal limitations being put on her, the wonder of the world. Like, holy hell, what would it be like, Nat, if you could just see the world through your childish eyes again? Like, I think about that so much. Like, what would it be like if I could see the world as if though I was a 5-year-old again? What would I think to do, right? And for both my son, my younger son, and my daughter, I want them to be able to have that in an environment where they could fail, get hurt, succeed, not get hurt, have fun, and be totally protected, and have the ability to just be kids. That's what I want. And you know what? If something, it's crazy. I was just watching the Randy Pausch last lecture like 2 days ago. I watch it like once a month because there's always something else I get during that time. Like, the gotcha moment for me in all of this is like, if there was one thing I would like for all of them to know, is that they can learn something different from each other that they both got from my wife and I. And I hope that this kind of just lives to that point.
I love it. There's a anecdote that his name's Tommy Rivs. He's part of iFit community and a health, advocate. And he said, when we're kids, we're running from the start. You're leaning forward, you're always running. And the issue is people tell us to stop running. That it's inherent in us. We all can run. We're all capable of it. It's not until someone says, slow down, stop running, that we start to restrict ourselves. And so it's learning to have that freedom again, and know that this is just part of my 5-year-old self that wants to run, wants to enjoy this. And I think that's beautiful. I hope that your kiddos hear this, that you share it with them, because that got me emotional. And I don't have kids and I don't want kids. And I was just like, oh, something like that with someone. So, and that's the beautiful mentorship, the relationship too, internally, between parent, child, learning from each other, learning from you, you learning from them. And, I think that if they follow in dad's footsteps and they've got, mom's support, and, we are who we are as a unit, they're going to have an incredible life ahead of them. So Carmelo, as we wrap up, where can people find information about you, about Aethl Bio, about everything that we've kind of touched on today? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is probably the best. It's funny, Nat, I haven't, at the time of this recording, I still haven't even been public about it. So, like, when this comes out, when you let me know, like, hey, it's going to come out in whatever time, I'm like likely gonna just write a LinkedIn message, be like, "Yo, so this is what I've been doing for 3 months." um, yeah, if they want to, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm getting better at it, but if you hit the contact button on our website, it goes to me or to my partner anyway at Aethl. So that's a very good way to reach me, and I encourage you to reach out because in every way we are looking to collaborate because I'm still trying to understand the scope of what it is that we're doing and how its benefits can be attributed to the population at whole. So yeah, thank you because you basically platformed me in this regard.
It's launching. It'll probably
Yep.
be right after the Thanksgiving holiday that you're listening to this. So ample time for Carmelo, you to get kind of prepared for what I hope will be some folks reaching out, wanting to know how they can get involved. We're going to link everything we've talked about today, whether you're interested in the specific Aethl Bio stuff. I'll pop the not impossible information in here. It's all in the same mindset of we can change the world if we just appreciate all the capabilities that we have within us and we work together and we do it in a non-competitive fashion. So, Carmelo, thank you so much for joining today. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I would love to have you back, like, in 6 months, a year, once we know how things are going and look back on this and be like, okay, are we still like fully on that boat that we in fall?
That sounds fun as hell. We can measure how many more grays I
Yeah, there we go.
have.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Take a deep breath, take a moment as you get started on your day. And you know how to reach me, and we'll get you your information on how to reach Carmelo if you're interested. So thanks, everyone. And we will talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon on another episode of Motivation and That.